Okay, everybody set up. So I'm Sergeant Cameron Roden with the Utah Highway Patrol. I'm the Public Information Officer. With the incredibly deadly weekend that we just experienced this last weekend, we appreciate your help and support in coming to address these behaviors and try and make a difference on Utah roadways. First off, we're going to hear from Colonel Mike Rappage to talk to us about these different crashes and to talk about some of these behaviors that we saw this last weekend.
Good morning. Thank you to all of our media partners for coming out here and helping us get some information out and actually put some perspective on the really challenging weekend we've seen on Utah's roadways over this last weekend. It would seem like the weekend just wouldn't stop as far as the horrible incidents we were seeing out on our freeways. This morning, we're going to take a really quick moment to kind of review the 5 fatal crashes that we were involved with and our troopers investigated throughout the state this year. But more than anything, what we're trying to do is we are seeing dramatic increases in the fatal crashes on Utah's roadways in the past year. And that's on the heels of seeing dramatic increases in fatalities and fatal crashes in the year previous. Year to date, as far as the number of fatal crashes that the Highway Patrol has investigated, as well as the number of people who have died as a result of those fatal crashes, is up by over 50% in both categories. This is a trend that we've seen increasing throughout the year, and it's not a trend that is changing. It is increasing. It's getting worse in every area that we've done as well. We're seeing results of impaired driving. We're seeing these results from speeding. We're seeing these results from distracted driving. We're seeing these results from fatigue. And then, of course, we're always seeing these, and we're missing the opportunities for survivable crashes when people aren't wearing their seatbelts. But it's these really bad driving behaviors that are most concerning. Extreme speeds, extreme DUI that result in wrong-way drivers and head-on crashes, people pushing the limits and going too far and ended up in fatigue, and all of the distractions. As a culture, as a driving culture, we have become way too comfortable in how safe our vehicles are. We have vehicles that can drive very fast, and they can do so very comfortably. It doesn't change the fact that when we increase speeds and we see more speeds on the freeway, things happen quickly. And our ability to respond and avoid and not become involved in a collision, they go down quickly as well. And the results of those collisions, when we're talking about speed and the impacts of those speeds, go up dramatically in the devastating results. Over the last weekend, our Highway Patrol troopers investigated 5 fatal crashes, resulting in 6 deaths. Just a real quick recap of that. Saturday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning, we had a fatal crash on I-70 in Sevier County, where a vehicle, for an unknown reason at this time, left the roadway suddenly, resulting in a rollover crash that resulted in the death of one person, a 37-year-old female from Colorado. Almost simultaneously at the same time, Saturday morning early, we had a really horrible and devastating crash resulting from a wrong-way driver who, by all indications and early investigations, as a result of a very impaired driver, that resulted in a wrong-way crash on I-15 at freeway speeds. The devastation of that was unbelievable. It resulted in the death of one female, Angelica Jimenez, or Jelly Jimenez, immediately following her wedding night. And we've got members of the Jimenez and Don Rupp family that are here. They're going to help us share the stories of what all that means. Later on Saturday in the afternoon in Morgan County, we had another crash involving a motorcycle rider who drifted outside of his lane and ultimately impacting a cable barrier. After the same evening on Saturday evening, we had another head-on crash that occurred in Utah County on SR6 near Billy's Mountain, resulting in the death of 2 people when a vehicle, for an unknown reason at this time, drifted from eastbound lanes into the westbound lanes, striking another vehicle head-on. The vehicle that was traveling in the westbound lanes, both occupants of that vehicle ended up dying as a result of that crash. And then early yesterday morning, we had our 5th fatal crash in Washington County on I-15. We had a single vehicle. Early indications indicate that fatigue was a contributor in this crash, where a vehicle ended up coming and striking the back end of a semi truck at freeway speeds, resulting in the death of one person. The reason we're taking an opportunity for this is the impacts of these. It was a significant weekend. 5 fatal crashes in a 2-day period over a single travel weekend is unbelievable, and it's horrible. But bigger than that, we wanted to take an opportunity and use the help of our media partners and our public outreach professionals to bring some emphasis to this. I think we get numb to the idea when we hear these things that it's just another traffic collision, that it's just another fatal highway statistic. It's not. Fatal crashes are horrible. They're devastating. They're violent. And they result in devastating impacts and consequences to family members, to victims, and communities throughout the state. And this last weekend has absolutely emphasized that. 5 fatal crashes and the impact that that has on families, the victims that are involved, both of the involved involved vehicles and the passerbys that need to be there and help with those things, and then with our communities and the ripple effect that it has out there are tremendous. And I think we get too used to just taking in consideration that's just another highway statistic. And so we're asking for an opportunity to bring some emphasis to that these things are horrible. And when people are making decisions to be out on the roadway, especially if they're making the very stupid decision to get behind the wheel after they've been drinking and impaired, especially when they're impaired to the point that they can't tell that they're driving the wrong way on a freeway, is unacceptable. It's bad behavior, and it has horrible consequences. And we're trying to bring as much attention to that as we can. As we go through this, we'll talk a little bit more about those, and we can talk about some of the enforcement efforts and some of the statistics we have. But in the meantime, as we talked about before, we have some of the victims and some of the family members from that head-on crash that occurred in Salt Lake County that resulted in the death of Angelica, or Jelly Jimenez, or her name as of that night and her married name, Dawn Tupp, a member of one of our Native American cultures here in the state of Utah, as part of the Skull Valley Band of the Ghost Shoot Indians. Her family members are with us to talk about some of the things that she was involved with, how proud she was to live in the state of Utah, how proud she was of her heritage, and how excited she was to be able to start her new life with her new family and her new children. She was a mother, she was an aunt, she was a daughter, she was a sister, and she was a brand new bride. And that ended very tragically and horribly as a result of some very, very bad decisions and bad behavior on the part of a single driver. With that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Roden.
So as the colonel indicated, we're going to hear from several of the members of Angelica's family that was involved in the Salt Lake County crash. First, we'll hear from her sister, Rachel Vigil, as well as her new husband, Tenzing Dondup, and then also one of the members that was in that crash, Mary. So we'll turn the time over to them.
So as he had stated, my name is Rachel Vigil. I'm one of Angelica's older sisters. What was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life was also her worst day of her life. Right before she had passed away, we had just left her reception, and it was because it was cut short. If it did not get cut short, she would have still been at her reception hall. Ever since she was born, she's always been the happiest baby through her whole life. When she would walk into a room, you see her glow. She smiled at everybody. She was a mom of 2 loving boys and was weeks away from finalizing her adoption for her 3rd. She was a homemaker, a best friend, a sister, and like he mentioned, a new bride. She only was married about 7 hours before her life was taken. She, when she got in the accident, she had a few minutes before her life was completely gone to make her final call to my sister and let her know she was in an accident. She called for help. She said she was in severe pain, gave him the location where she was at. She was only on the phone for 2 brief minutes. she started to have an asthma attack. She had really bad asthma and had forgotten her inhaler. She was just excited that she had finally got married to her high school sweetheart. This is the day that she was looking forward to for over a year. She had to reschedule her marriage because of COVID. So when we started to plan her wedding clear back in February, everything was done and she was just waiting for her big day. She was the most loving person that we've known. We were having good conversations about her yesterday and all the wonderful memories that she had. And trust me, there's a lot of lives that have been impacted by this. She was the type of person who would give her shirt to anybody if they needed it. They were hungry. They were hungry. She would feed them. They needed anything. She was there. Her husband is taking it very hard, and so is her children. Her youngest doesn't quite understand yet, but he's starting to recognize that his mom will not be home. She was loved by many, many people. I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss for words for what had happened. I'm still don't know why it happened. You know, it was just the negligence of two others that caused this horrific accident to happen. We are lucky enough to have our niece who survived. And we are blessed to have Tenzing here and still be strong for his family. She's going to be deeply, deeply missed by many. Again, I'm at a loss for words. I don't even know what to say now. So I'm just going to step back for a moment and let her husband talk about their life together and how this has impacted his family. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tenzing Donda. Me and my wife. He was everything to me and our kids. And they took her. And I want to know why.
It's okay. Just let Mary talk. Go ahead, Mary.
I feel because I was the last person with Jelly in her last living moments that I owe it to her and her family to describe and to tell you how she lived her last hours. On Friday, August 6th, I was very excited because I spent the whole day trying to be the best bridesmaid I could for her. At the end of the night, as the reception went to a close, me and Jelly went driving. I was driving to go get us food. We didn't know what to get, but she threw out the idea of let's get carne asada fries. Her favorite. As we got to the place to get food, I had thrown out there that I do not like driving on the freeway. It makes me anxious. And I would like to say that just shows the type of white person that Jelly is, because as soon as I said that, she's like, it's okay, we can trade and I'll drive. And after we had got our food, we pulled over at a gas station and I had switched from the driver's seat to the passenger, and she switched from passenger to driver's seat. We were supposed to be heading to her sister's house, but we had stopped at her house real quick to drop off her wedding dress and a few of her wedding gifts. And after we were on our way to her sister's house so that we can celebrate the life and day that we just had. I would like to throw it out there that we were both wearing our seatbelts. We were both safe. We made sure of it. Jelly spent her last living hours Jelly spent her last living hours talking about her family. And it's funny because as we were leaving her house, she was on a phone call with her sister. And she had said that, like, it's very hard to get her sister to stop talking. But that night, it was very hard to get her to stop talking. She wouldn't stop talking about how she loved her sisters, her brothers, her nieces and nephews, even her nephews who became family that weren't biological. She loved her grandma, grandpa, both of them, her aunts and uncles. She even talked about how much she loved her kids and her new family husband. What was such a sweet night that was filled with laughter, joy, and love was cut by short by a driver that had gone on the freeway the wrong way and hit us. I know people are normally like, it happened so fast, but it literally did. We were just talking, and before we realized it was too late, we were hit. I don't remember much from the accident as I was passed out. When I woke up, I had tried waking Jelly up. And once that didn't work, I found my phone and I tried contacting other people. No one was answering, so I panicked and I tried waking Jelly up again. I didn't know at the time. So I did what I could do and tried contacting other people. Thankfully, someone answered, and the rest of the family was informed. Her life was cut off shortly. because of someone's stupid mistakes of drinking and driving. Like I said, I'm glad we were both wearing our seatbelts, because if I was not, I probably wouldn't be here today. I'm thankful I only suffered minor injuries. But at what cost? I can't sleep because all I see when I close my eyes are headlights of the truck that hit us. Every bright light I see turns into a headlight. I think it's safe to say that I'm very past traumatized. I'm just happy Jelly was someone in her last breathing moments. And I'm glad she spent her last living hours talking about all the people she loved. And I made very sure of it, that she knows she was loved as well.
I'd like to thank Angelica's family. With this being so fresh, it's not an easy thing for them to do, to relive the events of that night, and we appreciate their courage and strength in coming today and to be able to share their story. In conclusion, I want to turn the time back to Colonel Rappage, just to conclude a few of the items that we see as we experience the weekend like we have.
Rachel, Mary, Tinsey, thank you for being willing to share your story. There have been 179 fatal crashes in the state of Utah to date. There's 179 stories just like this one of tragedies and lives cut short, and the impacts of these. They're not just statistics. They're horrible, and the impacts are devastating to families, to communities, and to victims. We thank Angelica's family for being here today, and our hearts go out to them, and our sorrow is with them as well. Our highway patrol troopers were there that night. They were there with the family. They talked to the family. They tried to help them understand what happened. We do that with every single crash. We're there, we see the devastation, we see what happens, and we work with the families and try to put perspective on why something horrible like this had to happen when it didn't. But thank you for your opportunity to share with us. In the state of Utah, we're seeing more high speeds. We're seeing more intoxicated drivers. We're seeing more distracted driving, and we're seeing inattentive driving. And we need to change the curve on that. It's important. Driving is serious business, and it needs all of our attention. It needs us to do it exactly appropriately. Small decisions sometimes have really horrible consequences, as we've seen this weekend, and especially with Angelica's family. I would be remiss if we didn't point out, in addition to what the impact we see with the victims, what we see in the communities, our troopers, our police officers, our first responders, our victims advocates, our EMTs, they're out there on every single one of these. It's getting so frequent that we almost don't even have a chance to get them emotionally take a breath before they're off to the next one and dealing with the next tragic incident. We're doing everything we can. We do enforcement, we do media outreach. We're grateful for our media partners to help bring emphasis to these kinds of issues and take opportunities on a weekend like we've seen in our state in this past weekend to show that there's reasons, but there's things that we can do. We can make better decisions. We can be safer, and we can avoid devastating consequences. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us get the perspective on this.
So we're available for some one-on-one interviews. If you would like some one-on-one interviews, please feel free to ask But that will conclude the conference today. Again, we appreciate everybody's attendance and help, and for Angelica's family in attendance. Thank you.